And here we are, starting another conversation. Judah McNeil, me, with Ford, the surfing violinist, Suze. Man, a lot going on these days,
A lot.
and a lot of change in your life, a little bit in my life, but in the world. And so today, after talking to you a little bit, I was thinking I do want to talk more about some books I had in mind, some movies, and actually some music. But I think this is a good opportunity to talk about the art of money as we reverse redact. One of the biggest, let's say, one of the most lauded piece of art that has ever been created is the dollar bill.
Right.
And it is a beautiful piece of art. I mean, have you ever looked at a dollar bill or, a $5 bill? It's got pretty beautiful art on there.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
And my brother was showing me a Canadian dollar the other day. The Canadian money has gone full blown, like it's gone beyond monopoly money. It looks terrible. It's got like it's see-through in some places. Anyways, so the art of money. What help me understand, first of all, I sort of understand the fiat nature of our money, right? And the fact
Right.
that it only has value, or its value is sort of controlled by our government, and not so much. I mean, a little bit by the market, but the market is controlled by the government.
Right.
And so help me understand sort of the history. What are we talking about here? Ani is Mart. Money is art.
Right. Well, if you think back to, Jesus was a person who talked a lot about money. He talked about it all the time. And so that became an interesting little point of debate. And it's interesting seeing where he kind of came down on that, as a religious leader and uh, founder. So I think a lot of times people will, I don't know, either ignore it or they'll interpret a lot of what he said in a religious sense, and they don't really think it through the practical implications. But um, Jesus was presented by some other religious leaders with this question that was meant to trip him up. It's like, oh, we got this, this coin here. Should we pay taxes to Caesar or not? He's like, give me the coin. He says, and he looks on the coin. He says, well, whose image is on the coin? They said Caesar's, and he said, well, render to Caesar what is Caesar's, render to God what is God's. And it's kind of one of these profound non-answers that he was, it's almost like his answers were very Socratic in nature. They're almost like a mirror that made people ask the question. He didn't ask them necessarily a question all the time with his answer, but the answer was this kind of rhetorical puzzle that forced the viewer to, or the hearer to say, what did that mean? What was he saying? And he's saying a lot with that. And the thing is, our money 2,000 years ago, if you think about in terms of the innovations that have happened technologically over the last 2,000 years, not much has changed when it comes to money. At least that coin back then was made out of some metal that was precious, that was hard to get to. Now today, our Caesar can sit there and press a button and print more of it. And
Yeah.
it's limitless. There is no time, energy that has to be, to mine that money. That money
Right.
doesn't have to be mined. It just can be fiat, and fiat is an interesting word. Let there be, that's a God speaking something into existence. It is saying that the state is a God. And that's really interesting because that was what Jesus was saying there. Oh, Caesar has given you this thing. He pretends to be a God. But even by saying that, even by Jesus saying, render to God what is God's, that's kind of a revolutionary statement because he has the audacity to say that the state is not a God. And now we're 2,000 years later, and I just see people left and right pretending that the state is God all the time, from the West to the East, all these debates that we have every single day. It comes down to people believe it. Like, if we don't have a watchman, if we don't have a watchman to watch over us, we're going to end up cheating and defrauding one another.
Yeah.
So we have to have this third party, this trusted third party. They're human beings. Why are we giving the power of a god to a human being that's just like us?
Yeah.
Has just prone to the exact same eccentricities and corruptions and greed and envy that we have. We are putting that in the place of a human being. And the Fed is run by human beings. And they are playing Caesar, but unlike Caesar, they can, out of thin air, manufacture currency. And this and that trickles down. You want to talk trickle down economics? Well, that's where it trickles down from. This notion that work has no value, that we're going to play with monopoly money. We can just print more. It doesn't matter. You know, in I think of The Incredibles. You know, that I'm not the biggest Ayn Randian, but that movie is definitely very Ayn Randian in its frustration. You know, here are these superheroes that have to hide their ability because it hurts other people's feelings. And, you know, and this, I love this line from Mr. Incredible. You know, they're going to go have second grade graduation or whatever. He's like, it's just like they just keep finding new ways to celebrate mediocrity.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm teaching school now. And so I see it every day. The standards just get lowered and lowered and lowered and lowered and manufactured. Moving scales. It's just always moving scales.
I work at the Chicago Public School. They're finding more and more ways now to celebrate failure.
Yeah, not even mediocrity. It used to be mediocrity when they made Incredibles. Now
I'd love to get back to mediocrity.
Yeah, it's failure. We're celebrating failure.
Yeah.
And so, you know, you look at Lady Justice, right? You know, blind. She's got scales. What's on those scales? You got gold is on those scales. But we have replaced that gold. We've replaced something with weight with something that has nothing. It's no weight, no meaning.
Right.
It's a piece of art, like you said, that, you know, is actually okay, pleasing to the eye. Not the best piece of art we've ever seen in the last 500 years, you know. And it doesn't compare to the Renaissance here, right?
Right.
But we have gotten into this rut where fiat declarations of the gods of our culture have become meaningful, and we just keep going under this momentum of believing that money has value, and we all know it doesn't. We all know it doesn't. We're just locked in this sort of willing suspension of disbelief that our trusted third party, the government, knows what it's doing, and we just keep exchanging these meaningless tokens.
Yeah. Well, my biggest problem isn't so much trusted third party. I believe in trusted third parties, but not on a global scale, not on a national scale. Like I believe in a community, you know, in a trusted third party community, and I believe in accountability. But when it becomes global and national, that's called that's not trusted third party. That's fascism.
No, it's religion. You know, it becomes a religion. It's a god of the gaps. You know, and the thing is, trusted third parties are fine, but they need to be subject to other trusted third parties. Accountability, transparency cannot happen when someone has godlike powers. When someone can declare something by fiat, and the other problem is with democracy. Our democracy is a joke because you only have, you know, two choices when all is said and done: this guy or that guy, or this girl or that dude. You know, that's it. That's not a true, like, voting. Like, you should be able to have like a weighted vote.
It's not a marketplace.
It's not a marketplace, exactly. And so we have been reduced to either or, and it's evil or, you know, it's Satan or God. And I mean, the religious language that has come up every one of these last 20 elections, it's just insane how it literally has gotten to the point of Hitler or Messiah. Hitler or Messiah. Now it's getting to the point where it's Satan or God. Like, it's gotten to that level of stupidity. I mean, the hair pulling out about this, you know, the FCC, whichever side you're on that debate in 2015, when Obama's legislation was passing, this is going to, you know, kill the market. And this is, you know, a tool of big government. Well, now it's like, oh, well, this is going to kill the commoner. This is a tool of Comcast, who is the Almighty God. So it's always reduced to this religious debate.
Yeah.
And we can't actually have any sort of nuance talk about anything because we've reduced everything to this just extreme hyperbole. And like you said, if in a marketplace, you can actually choose. I'm not going to buy that product because I disagree with them. I'm a trusted third party too, and I'm not trusting you with the value. I can take my business elsewhere. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
You know, monopolies happen when they're in bed with the state, when the state has put so many little, again, things that are made, decisions that are made behind closed doors. You can't trust a third party that won't open its doors. You can't trust a third party that won't allow debate in the open air. So yeah, we are in this rut, and my theory, my working theory here, my hypothesis, maybe it's not late enough to call it a working theory, but my hypothesis is paper is about it must be supplanted by some other substance, and we're in the paper age. We've been in the paper age since the printing press. When the printing press happened, it was a tool of revolution. It was a tool of democratizing information. It was taking the power out of the hands of the priests and the people who could write and putting it out there. Taking the hands out of the scribes, because they're the ones that are writing stuff down.
Yeah, nothing shows that more better. That you ever seen Newsies?
Oh, I've never actually seen Newsies.
Oh, okay. Well, in Newsies, the spoiler alert, the big turnaround is that they get their own printing press and they're able to print their own paper.
Right. And that is what, when we talk about the good parts of democracy, that's what we mean, getting the tools into the hands of the people so they don't have to listen to what some esoteric, the halls of power, the ivory tower intellectuals or the religious leaders are dictating to the entire world. That everyone can be a law to themselves. That was the purpose of the printing press, was to get the information out to everyone, right? But now you look what the printing press has become, what paper has become. And the three biggest tools of paper consolidation of power, re-centralizing power, are copyrights and patents, laws, and paper money. And these three things have become shields for people in positions of power. It used to be that books were written to exchange information and give more value. Well, now law books, these books, and they're books. They're not just like a bill. It's a bill that's 3 pages long. No, it's not like the Constitution or the Bill of Rights. It's freaking 300 to 1,000 pages long. No one reads it. It's written in the most obfuscational language. It's meant to miscommunicate. The footnotes are where the real important stuff is written, and you can't understand it unless you have a law degree and 20 years of experience interpreting these ciphers. So these three things are meant to entrench power. They're not meant to democratize or bring value to the world. They are paper shields. But the thing is, paper can be destroyed, and I really believe we are about to. We think we've been in the digital age. We haven't. We're still in the paper age because we have paper money, paper law, and we have paper copyright and patent. And all three of those things will be supplanted by the digital revolution that is coming. I think blockchain and Bitcoin are signs of the times. I don't know if they are the actual thing that will end up working. They might have some bugs and it doesn't end up working. But something along these lines where actual, true, immutable math can, where 2 + 2 actually equals 4, where, it's not just teachers saying, oh, well, you're 65 isn't a 65, it's actually 100 because you're a good person. Like, immutable math will make those systems of paper and these, meaningless certificates of passing or failing, what they are. And the only way to do that is for people to actually get, hit the books again and actually understand what's going on.
Well, that actually, so that taps into kind of a reoccurring theme for me. Anytime we go back and look at a movie or a book or song, every time we look at some kind of message from our society, the thing that I think attracts me the most is stakes. You brought up the idea of stakes. And to me, that translates into work. Like I am most endeared into a story that values the idea of work and rewards hard work and sacrifice.
Yeah.
And I think that's what we're looking at right now. What I hear from you is fiat money, the paper money, the art, of the dollar bill right now is the major problem with it is there is not a connection. There's not a direct relationship between the reward and the work.
Right.
It's assigned, it's manipulated. And so in the digital age, the thing I like about Bitcoin is that it's a reward. You get it by providing something like you provide space on your computer, you provide time, you provide. Now they've got. You saw that the app that Philip DeFranco was pushing that you can use Bitcoin to reward videos, that kind of thing.
Right.
Is that what you're kind of talking about?
Yeah, I think just in general, work is undervalued in a post. What is who to blame? I really think John Maynard Keynes is the person to blame. If there's somebody that gets the lion's share of the blame, it's that dude, because his whole philosophy, which all of us we're in that system. We are in the Keynesian consumerism system. It's not Keynesian capitalism.
Yeah,
capitalism is capitalism and communism. They're just two words that almost maybe shouldn't even exist, because anytime they are tried, a third party comes in and insinuates themselves, and then it's the tragedy of the commons, really. Both capitalism and communism suffer from the tragedy of the commons, because someone always ends up insinuating themselves into the place of power. And what we have in the West is not capitalism at all. It's Keynesian consumerism. Whether it was George Bush in the White House or Barack Obama in the White House, it didn't matter. Both of them did Keynesian consumer bailouts to the banks and the people who got these, fraudulent loans and defaulted. Everyone who defaulted just got paid. Oh, it's just like you said, we reward failure. Why do we do that in the school system? Because the system rewards failure.
Yeah.
Oh, here's your golden parachute after causing this mess. And people are saying, is Bitcoin a Ponzi scheme? Whether or not it is remains to be seen. But I'll tell you right now, the real Ponzi scheme is Keynesian consumerism, and it revealed itself in the housing crisis. And that housing crisis was birthed in the halls of power of Washington with Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac and the credit default swaps of Wall Street. Those two things were intertwined. You can't just blame Wall Street. The Occupy Wall Street was just woefully ill-suited to figuring out who the real bad guys were, because the people behind Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac were just as culpable. When you give a system that rewards giving loans to people who can't pay it off, people are going to double down on that. That was the bubble. And that was what John Maynard Keynes and FDR and Teddy Roosevelt, that was their legacy, giving us this bubble idea that you can just keep printing money, that you can just keep buying your way out of a problem. Just throw fake money at it, and that will get us better. No, we're just doubling down on the process. So none of those things prioritize work. In either market, the consumer market, which is just like, we'll give you money and you can buy it. You can buy whatever you want. Like, you're going to buy your way out of the problem because we need money to keep our system going. Or the communism thing, which says all work is equal. Yeah. Well, that's just not accurate. I mean, the real world does not work like that. If you if you go out and plant a garden of weeds, and another dude goes out and plants a garden of apples, and you're mad because the guy who planted the garden of apples is making, people want to come and eat his apples. Oh, but you need to provide for the guy who's planted the garden of weeds. He's working too. Yeah. Well, no, the real world called, and it says work has meaning. Some work has more value than other work. If you want to sacrifice the value that you could receive by doing something you believe in, that's your prerogative, but you cannot be expected to be paid the same amount as somebody else who's doing something that more people want.
Well, yeah, that's it's like you were saying about Incredibles. It has to celebrate mediocrity, right? Like you can't even celebrate failure. You have to keep it right in the middle, because if you have any outliers, they're ruining the system. Right. And that's why I love that line in The Incredibles where if everybody is, I can't remember, if everybody is this, or then nobody is this.
Yeah, if everybody is super, then nobody is. I think that's
right. Yeah, and so, but when it comes to Bitcoin, though, my fear is, I guess, well, one, I don't know anything about it. Well, I mean, I know a little bit about it, but it seems so complicated. And the other thing is it seems really popular right now, which always scares me.
Okay, so two things. So number one, I would say, in answer to the complicated part, this is where the stakes and the work come in. And in order to shoulder responsibility, in order to be every man's atlas, in order for every man to be the atlas of his own destiny, you have to do the work. I mean, you have to really get disciplined. And the fact is, we can have this conversation because somebody has done the work of programming, coding. We are in the digital world. We need to all be learning code to some degree, whether or not we get to the point where we're, becoming the next Zuckerberg or whatever, is not really the point. Steve Jobs was not the best coder in the world, but he understood the space and he became this philosopher poet, in a way. I mean, you can think about him like that. Like, he was this champion. He was a storyteller is what he was, but he found a way to tell these stories in such a way to give us some of the best products that we have. And, there's a lot of things I disagree with the guy in terms of the way he ran his business. A lot of things I agree with him on in terms of the intuitiveness of his technology. And we're talking about the beauty of his art. I mean, I don't think the newer ones are as good as the older ones in terms of their beauty, but yeah, I think that you have to do the work. It is a challenge. It's daunting. But in order to get trusted quote unquote third parties out of the way, in order to not have a Fed that's sitting there dictating, you're going to see this ration, you're going to see this ration. We'll have to stand up on our own 2 feet, and we'll have to take a risk.
I mean,
and we'll have to take risks.
Them's the stakes.
Yes, them's the stakes of the real world, and that's been what the real world has always been. This, living in this little mollycoddled sort of thing. And the thing is, we need to understand this is not how the real world is. Okay, like, for the 30% of us who can listen to this podcast and make these kinds of podcasts, the other 70% of the world lives out in the real world. Yeah. They live in that place where the stakes matter, where you could die tomorrow, whether of exposure or malnutrition or whatever. Like, them's the stakes. This is the real world. We're all going to die. And, in this Western post-Keynes utopia we've made, this bubble, this is the real bubble. We forget that we're going to die, that death is coming for every single one of us. And in the meantime, the stakes are real and there are going to be losses.
Well, then the other thing, though, is that the thing that sort of scares me about it is the stakes, the risk, and all that is I will have to take in the medium of the internet that is controlled by Google, is controlled by Apple.
That's where you need to look into it. And this is one of the things we're going to have to. We're not only, and so I'm definitely leaning towards the Austrian economic school, in terms of, but the liberal side, the Occupy Wall Street side, they do have a point. It's not only governments that we have to fear. It's also corporations. Corporations are groups of people. They're trusted third parties. Are they actually trustworthy? And I would say not all of them are. So we need to, reduce not only our dependence on the federal government or the state government, but also our dependence on Facebook and Google and all the others, and Comcast. I mean, that's another one. Yeah, you do want to hold up a middle finger to Comcast too. So all of these people need to be held accountable, and that's the whole point of being peer-to-peer or having any sort of freedom, that you need to be able to extricate yourself from your dependence on those things. And so what that will require is a lot more people in this next generation getting into Linux, getting, a computer that they actually own. Our PCs these days are basically, like this one guy, I'm going to link this talk from, it's called Bitcoin for Beginners by Andreas Antonopoulos. And it's the most succinct 30 minutes. It tells a pretty good, gives you kind of a broad picture of what this whole thing is about. And he says, our PCs aren't owned. Some Russian hacker probably owns your PC. We download some extension that's corrupted, and so they see everything that's happening on your PC. So there are other things that you're going to have to start to learn, other technologies you have to learn, more decentralized approach. Some computers that are totally offline, where you can keep your information, that it's never going to be able to be accessed. Learning how to actually make a password that is truly protected, that will not be able to be hacked by an algorithm. And these things, even, and stuff is going to change. We're getting into the world of quantum computing, where these computers are going to be able to, if you have a normal word for a password, they're going to be able to hack it.
Oh yeah. No, they already can.
Yeah. And we're getting to the point where even with Bitcoin, like, they're going to have to double down on the cryptography side, because quantum computing is going to be even more difficult. But make it difficult to make a password that actually locks your information. But that, and this is another thing, sign of the times, if Bitcoin doesn't work and it fails, in 20 years, quantum computers will hack every single thing. Nuclear launch codes, they'll figure them out.
Yeah.
A computer will figure it out. Machine learning, it will figure it out without any sort of human interaction. So when people are saying, oh, well, the system's fine like it is, no, it's not. It's on the brink we're on the brink of a crazy world. And so what Bitcoin is calling people to do is to be more secure with their data, and calling us to that, again, calling us as individuals to take some responsibility for our actions, because the middleman, they're not going to be able to keep up with the Russian hacker. Or, I'd say Russian, but I mean, they can be any, that's kind of the stereotype. But I mean, those guys are evidently pretty good at math. They figured it out.
Devil's advocate here. If I'm going along that lines, so Google becomes our government. Okay, say which I think is a very possible future. Google becomes our government. They hold the keys to the Bitcoin. They hold the highest.
No, they don't. That's not how Bitcoin works.
No, I'm just saying. What if they like not hold the keys, but like they have the resources to control, like, the best mathematicians. Like, what if the hack here? What if the reverse redaction here isn't going full board into Bitcoin, but actually going full board into, like you were saying before, we've had a discussion before on not a show about, that the empire had to go physical in order to not be hacked. What if we need to go physical, primitive? What if we need to go cabin in the woods? I mean, this is getting a little,
Yeah. Right. Well, I just think, there is always the possibility that, the true anarchist who hates the world, or some, true believer who hates technology, tries to destroy everything, but that would require a real concerted effort now at this point. Like, and let's see.
Or what about an amalgamation, like where, like some kind of, what if the next thing isn't Bitcoin, it's some kind of, and maybe Bitcoin is more, or could be more like this, where it's tied in with some kind of physical, real thing. Like, I'm almost thinking right now, everybody's into Bitcoin, I'm going to buy gold. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Something where I would like to, actually, I'd like to see more stories, more movies and books come out about, as far as sci-fi goes, the ability to what do they call the Internet of Things, something that combines so that you can't hack a thing, right? So something, you can't hack an inanimate object, something that is offline.
Right.
Something that uses the power of being offline. I haven't really thought through this.
Yeah, and that's why you do really need to read into what Bitcoin is. Basically, what it is a very, in terms of the back channel, what the blockchain does and what a Bitcoin is when it's mined. It's basically a very elegant math problem that's impossible without the key to access the power to actually use it. So, there's a very long key. And so it's, what they're recommending is you do not keep this key online anywhere. So like you can get these third-party devices. Again, you're trusting a third party that they're actually making something that's actually going to work, and they don't have some little end around worked into it.
Right, back door.
And this is again why it's necessary for all of us to learn more about this stuff, because in the free market, if a company is giving you something that's defective or they're stealing your money, you can see when they steal it. Like, well, then you're going to go online, and everyone, all the peers are holding that company accountable. So if they're giving you a shield that's not working, I mean, this is the same argument we've always had. Like, okay, you want to build a shield. Well, that shield needs to not break when it gets in battle. And if it breaks when it gets in battle and you survive, you're going to go back to that blacksmith, and you're probably going to kill the dude, or you're going to discredit him in citrus. So we have these, they call them wallets, offline wallets, and they're impossible for a computer to hack. Like, just at this point. Now, again, the technology, it's escalation, right? There's always going to be somebody coming with a new weapon to try to break in. But this is why we need third-party access, third-party accountability, instead of just trusting the government, because the government is effectively hacked. And like the other thing is, we talk about there's a lot of fear about Bitcoin being just numbers on a screen. Well, that's what our money is now. I mean, it's not. We're not just dealing in paper money. We're hardly even dealing in paper money. We're dealing with numbers on a screen, and we just trust the bank that, oh, that little ledger, they don't have a glitch in their system. Really? Like, these banks, they're not computer programmers necessarily.
Nobody even balances their checkbook anymore. So there's so much trust in like that bottom line number on your app in your phone.
And so there always is going to be some level of third party trust. We're not getting this system where it's like you're always going to be, looking over your shoulder at every single person you talk to. We don't do that in our situation now. But the issue is that we think that we need a monolithic center of that third party trust. And I think that that's what must go away in order for humans to enter the next age. Like that trust in the whole point of that book Watchmen was, who watches the Watchmen, right? Like, who watches the people who have the power to, well, not necessarily trustworthy. There's ample proof, and the big bailouts were the perfect proof to me when it comes to the financial situation, that they are just not trustworthy. We need to watch each other, and we need to watch ourselves. And I think that was where it definitely comes down to. You had a second question there. You're talking about the difficulty of the work problem. And then you're also talking about the popularity problem. Bitcoin has become so popular. It's kind of a hype. It's kind of a frenzy right now. Is it even a safe thing to trust in? And, I believe that it is, because of the technology behind it. And this is, it's prompted me to go into a career change. Like, I'm going to go all in on this programming thing, at least to understand it better, and try to make some of my own stuff, because software, I mean, it has changed our world forever, for the last 30 or 40 years. But most of us just don't understand the inner workings of it. And, previously I was looking at, I want to make movies. That was my favorite thing, storytelling and all that. And so I learned the inner workings of that. But I learned pretty quickly that the Hollywood industry suffers from the same just fiat. I mean, you could call it just fiat. Oh, this person has the power, and so therefore he is a trusted third party and should direct this movie. And you get knee deep in the movie, and you're like, this guy's not a trusted third party. And I mean, you look at what's happening in Hollywood right now with the sexual harassment allegations. Like, so many people just get just shuffled along as successes because they made money.
David Goyer. David Goyer. Sorry.
So it's gonna, again, require a lot of, on my part, shifting in my thinking and looking at software development from a new angle, because this is going to be the paper of the next century. It's going to be if we are a paper civilization built on foundations of paper, we are a civilization based on the foundations of code. The nice thing about code is you can tell when it works or not. And so Bitcoin has had a lot of people who've come in and tried it, and it's survived 9 years of attacks, one way or another, where people have come in and tried to take over, and they had one bit of bad code in their code, and their idea crumbled. Bitcoin kept going, and now that person's discredited. So it's a much more meritocracy based system where, you know, the math, if your math doesn't work, then you're not going to take over.
How fortuitous or interesting, ironic that math is going to be the future. You know, like I feel like we were getting to a place where math was dying, and now it's being resurrected. We're gonna soon. Our survival will be based on our ability to do math.
Well, and the thing is, I mean, if we're really honest and look back through history, I mean, math has kept people alive for millennia. I mean, you look at like how they built the pyramids, math. They didn't build that with, there wasn't a god or aliens that lifted those stones up. I mean, some people may believe that, but you know, ultimately it was math that made those sorts of things possible, even in what we would call primitive societies today. And again, like the risk associated with that, well, if you're on the wrong side of this lever, this pulley, you're crushed, dead, you know? So like back then it was do or die, right? And we are in a place now where it's getting pretty serious, and it's not just, you know, a social network and video games anymore. And kind of like we talked the other week about Ender's Game, you know, it may actually get to the point where math is where our wars take place.
Yeah.
And that's an evolution that's good. If math is where our wars take place, and we can, you know, decide it with a video game, and we have irrefutable proof that there's no glitch or cheat going on, which requires, you know, again, a lot of third-party investment. That requires a lot of individuals chiming in and saying, look, this math isn't going to work. And look, oh, we ran the code. You're right, it doesn't.
Often that is what, when it comes down to it, what whenever I see there's something wrong with a movie, to me, it's almost like the math breaks down, you know?
Yes.
You see a bug in the code. Exactly. You can't really put your finger on it, but it's because when you go and look back, the math breaks down. It's not, the equation does not work.
And make no mistake about it, storytelling has an equation.
Yeah.
And, you know, and the reason why they're able to turn this stuff is because they happen to define the magic, you know, number for that time period, a magic algorithm for that system of events and current events and whatnot, in culture. But then when you see how the movie is made, you're like, oh, well, the math and the production is definitely messed up. Like that dude's getting $10 million and that dude's getting 1,000. What? Like, you know, you're talking about for a industry that loves to pretend that it's communist or socialist in nature, just watch how a movie's made. You want to talk about one of this greedy, weird institutions that is haphazard and doesn't make any sort of meritocracy sense. Right. It's Hollywood. It's show business. Like that place is upside down and twisted around, and it doesn't actually make economic sense when all is said and done. It's odd how the money works its way out in the system.
Yeah. The thought just came to me that my favorite things in life are where chance meets math, the marriage of chance and math. That, to me, that's what makes a great movie. That's what makes a great football game. That's what makes it good, you know.
Right. Chance and math and work, like you said. You know, I think, you know, it's art. We value those heroes that do the work, you know, that actually
work is what brings chance and math together. That's the glue, right? Because like my grandpa always used to say, the harder I work, the luckier I get.
Right. Yep. That's true. As far as I kind of, you know, I'm just kind of going in all different directions here, but you're talking about there's so many people involved in it right now. So many people being involved in it is normally a danger. I mean, that was the danger with the credit default swap hype and the irresponsible loans hype of Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. It's been the problem with the Silicon Valley bubble. And most people look at this and see this as just an extension of the Silicon Valley bubble. Mm-hmm. The difference, in my opinion, is that it's actually a specific technology in the same way that bronze was a specific technology and supplanted stone, or, you know, gave power to people who could beat stone in battle. It was different technology in steel, when steel and metallurgy and gunpowder came into the scene. Well, that beats just what came before. You know, that beats bronze. You know, guns beat swords. So these are technological innovations that everyone adapts in warfare in order to compete. And I think we've been looking at rhetorical arguments to try to fix the system when really it's only a technology that's actually going to solve the problem. And Bitcoin is not a currency, it's a technology, it's a protocol. And so what people are investing in here is the protocol. They're investing in the steel that will overthrow bronze. So they're investing in the digital algorithmic math problem that's going to overthrow the paper algorithmic problem, which is not an algorithm. That's the wrong word. It's the paper lock, you know, the paper locking mechanism.
The paper machine.
The paper machine. Like when you read the book of, you know, whatever bill that's passed and you're like, I have no idea how to interpret this exactly. You'd have to go through law school in order to be able to unlock this book.
Oh, yeah.
And so it is, but it's a shield of paper. Again, if you just say, I render this moot, this is a bunch of garbage, in the same way that the crown was a bunch of garbage, that substance was a bunch of garbage, and you know, us Americans aren't going to stand for it anymore. Well, you know, Satoshi Nakamoto, whoever this dude or dudes or dudettes was back in 2009, when the first Bitcoin block was mined, the text of that was, let's see, I actually don't have it on me, but it was a reference to the bank bailout in 2009 that was happening in Britain. And so Satoshi Nakamoto, rather than going and petitioning government like I did back at that time, like, oh, we shouldn't be doing these frivolous you know, bailouts in order to get us out of frivolous loan trouble, and instead of doing that, instead of writing on paper, he wrote in code and mined something that I think will prove to change the world forever. Whether or not it is Bitcoin, if that is the final, you know, the log jam that undoes this absurd jam, or, you know, the log that ends up moving to undo the jam, I'm not sure. But I think Pandora's box has been opened, and the peers, you know, the group of people that are working on this, trying to figure it out, people are going to figure it out, and it's too late. Like, the existing systems are not going to be able to withstand it. The paper money and, you know, numbers on a screen are not going to be able to withstand this immutable math that's being done now. So that's my theory on it.
I love it, and I'm on board with you, man. This sounds this is exciting, and it's an exciting time.
Yeah, and you know, caution is due for anyone who's looking to invest in Bitcoin. It's extremely volatile. It'll change price, you know, $3,000 in a day. So if you are looking to invest in it, you know, do your reading. I'll include a link to Andreas Antonopoulos, his Bitcoin for Beginners video, and then a list of people that I consider trusted third parties to some degree on Twitter. Twitter has been the place where Bitcoin understanding has grown more than anywhere. And some of these guys, they have a really interesting perspective on it. And there's a great video by one of these guys who's been there since closer to the beginning, and he gives some real sober advice about it. Like, don't just think of this as a get rich quick scheme, because, and you know, for him, he's like, I'm willing to die for this. Like, I believe in the protocol that much. Like, I think the power has to be taken out of these untrusted third parties and put in the hands of the people. And so you know, he's all in. He's going Bitcoin. He's never going back. And so, and I actually believe that guy. I think, and that's the people that I kind of trust. They're going into this fully and saying, you know, this system has proven itself not trustworthy, and so we're getting off the boat. And for those, you know, and he even says, you know, don't invest everything, like, unless you truly believe in the technology. You're not doing it to make money. Like, you're doing this to, like, when it's all said and done and you have no money left, that you're willing to start back over and try something else. Right. Like, you know, you're investing in this as something more than just a get rich quick scheme. Because if you're in it for that, like, it's going to be a really scary 5 years. So yeah, just be careful for sure. And
as you should be with any investment.
Yeah. Don't think of it as a lottery, and I wouldn't even think of it as a stock market at this point. I would think of it more as a challenge to the system, and it's one that we'll see. I'm optimistic that it will be able to make it through and result in some change. It might not be the watershed event that I made it out to be. It might not be the printing press, but I think it is a step in the right direction.
Amen. And for me, my investment at this point is going to be time and research.
That's the better way to do it at this point. Like, I think new industries will form around this technology in whatever way that it comes. And so I think it is better to invest time, because, what else are we spending? Treat it like a pastime for now, to try to learn it, let it supplant some other thing that you were kind of getting tired of. For me, it's like traditional sports have just lost their total interest for me. So, Bitcoin is a good way to intellectually stimulate me and get me thinking about new things.
Awesome. How can we bring it down to the granular practical to our own lives?
So for me, it's been trying to learn some code. So very practically, the best thing I found for that so far, and I'm willing to hear back from the audience of what they use, but as a beginner, there is an app called Solo Learn, and they used to be like 20, or these different apps, and they were all code dependent. Each one had its own code that it would teach you. Well, so now they got this one where all of them are in the same place. So you can do HTML fundamentals, CSS, Python 3, JavaScript, C++. C++ is what Bitcoin was coded in, and Python is useful for Bitcoin as well. PHP, SQL, Java, Swift, C#, Ruby, and jQuery. So all these things are in one little place. And the great thing about it is it's real incremental in the way it teaches you. And it's just a bot. You just go through and you read the part, do a thing. And while you read the part, you can actually test the code yourself. You can go in and change the code and immediately see if you're writing the code correctly. You can run it and it'll show up right on your phone as if it's a web page, or as if it's, an output of the program. So it's been real helpful for me. I think it's a good start. I was starting to get into getting some books, but books, we're an ADD culture. And so this is a nice ADD way to, you have a few minutes, you work on a little bit of code, and I'm surprised by how much I've retained just over the last couple of weeks using it.
Would you say it's kind of like the Duolingo of coding?
Maybe. I haven't actually done much Duolingo. I think I got into it a little bit, but yeah, I kind of lost my way.
Is it gamified at all?
Yeah, it is. They have some ways to do that, and you could put your code up and have people review it and stuff like that. So I think it's.
What's the name of the app?
Solo Learn.
Solo Learn. Okay.
So it's been good for me. Yeah, I think that whole, and again, this is another reason why getting into math and understanding this stuff is important for our day and age, because the games have become a currency in and of themselves.
Yeah.
And I think it's important to understand how games will play a part in education and I think in the future, maybe even arbitration. So I think games will get there. And I'm just amazed. Like, I can't communicate with my students. Like, I'll just sit there. I'll have to say something 5 times, and then someone will still do it wrong, and I'll be like, I just said this 3 times. I mean, I literally said it 3 times, and she, you were looking right at me.
Yeah.
So it's just like the power for language to communicate anything has gotten to the point where it's show don't tell. We're in a show don't tell. The adage of cinema has happened, where with games and with UI, like with phone, like, you don't actually have to be taught how to use an iPhone. It's intuitive. You figure it out. Right. It's becoming more and more important for people, in order to teach, they gamify it, or they learn in the flow of doing it. It's a much more application based sort of instruction, I think.
Yeah, you have to sort of be an architect of the UI of your lesson.
Yes, exactly. And it has to be, in order to do that, again, it requires so much more work than just delivering a lecture. I mean, we're in a post-lecture age for sure.
But it can be more rewarding and fun. You can make it funny. Well, for me, on a philosophical level, I do want to revisit this idea of work and chance and math. And I think a good way to do that is just to kind of, I don't know, I kind of want to go through my days now, go through my day to day, and look for math. You know, look
Right.
for ways, and I don't mean like equations, like numbers, but look for ways that this was why I love chess. Like you can force people into situations where they have to do this or that. You know, it's math. And looking at our daily lives, like if I do this, you know, it's consequences, right?
Right, exactly. And math is a way to kind of get society back into that. You know, we have again we're in this post sort of, you know, self-esteem world where you can't tell somebody that they're wrong, or you can't disagree about a certain thing, and you can't hurt a kid's feelings. But when they play a video game, oh, they get their feelings hurt.
Yeah.
You know, any kid who plays Dark Souls gets their feelings hurt.
Yeah.
Any kid who plays League of Legends or Dota online gets their feelings hurt all the time. And it's a ruthless environment in which competition is king. And, you know, so you can pretend that this doesn't exist. You can pretend that, oh, we're all happy and we have self-esteem, but in the meantime, math actually works, and it's the kids who are the best mathematicians that end up winning League of Legends. You know,
it's true.
It's these Korean kids that are doing the math nonstop, and when you see it actually play out, you're like, how did he know that was going to work?
Yeah.
You know, it's just absurd how you know, not just the interaction time, but just the knowledge of I have enough damage to overcome.
Yep.
It's complex calculation, intuitively done. You know, I'm going to subtract because I have this armor penetration, and he has this armor and this health, and I have this much damage, but I also have this thing, blah, blah, blah. I mean, we're talking about multi-levels of complications.
Right. Going on simultaneously in their head while they're playing. That's why I'm not very good at those games.
Right.
Because I relied too much on the psychology and relational aspect of it and chance. I relied too much on chance.
Yeah, oh yeah, me too, for sure. I think most people end up doing it. I think that's why Americans, ironically, have been the worst at these traditionally. We always lose to Asia because I think our school system has honestly got into this just sort of fiat declaration. Oh, you're good. It's like, oh yeah, you're number one in America. And that number one in America means nothing in comparison to the number one in China or Korea. Like nothing, not even the top 20, you know, like just, oh yeah, you're number one. Sure. Yeah. Tell yourself that, dude.
All right. Well, this has been a great conversation. I hope to so next time we're going to get back to more consumable media. What?
All right.
What's more consumable than money? But
no, that's true.
Yeah, so we'll I think let's continue to revisit aspects of our society that are less I don't know, media driven, and look at little mirrors of our society and ourselves in politics, in all kinds of aspects of our lives.
Right. Sounds good.
All right. Well, that concludes our show. Thanks, Bub. Have a great day.
You too.
Oh, continue to make your. I always forget how's it go.
So continue reverse redacting. Make your own myth.
Using math. Ooh, we gotta work math into it.
Yeah, make your own mathematical myth.
Ooh, I like that.
Now we're getting the left brain and right brain working together. See, that's the whole picture there.
Excellent. All right.
All right, man.